And we begin tonight with the release of the Kraken, but not in the way Donald Trump was expecting. This morning, we learned that one of Trump's key allies and legal agitators cut a deal with Fani Willis's office in the Georgia election interference case. Attorney Sidney Powell is the second defendant in the sprawling case to reach a deal with prosecutors. Powell pleaded guilty to 6 misdemeanors for conspiring to intentionally interfere with the performance of election duties. She will serve 6 years of probation, pay a $6,000 fine, and write an apology letter to Georgia and its residents. She also agreed to testify truthfully against her co-defendants in future trials. She already has been doing some of that.
Do you understand as a special condition of this sentence that you were to provide, which you've already done, a recorded proffer to the state and provide any documents and evidence subject to any lawful privileges asserted in a good faith prior to entering this plea?
I do.
Her deal and the subsequent cooperation is the most immediate threat to the former president. It will also be our first real opportunity to hear from a key player from Trump's inner circle about what Trump was truly thinking in the days between him losing the election and the assault on our Capitol. This deal will also be extremely helpful to Special Counsel Jack Smith. But that does not mean that Powell is in the clear. She is one of the 6 unindicted co-conspirators in that case. In fact, she is co-conspirator number 3. In that indictment, Smith notes that Trump privately admitted to others that Powell's unfounded claims of election fraud were crazy, but he kept pushing those lies publicly and in legal filings anyway. Powell spent hours with Trump and his aides pushing unhinged lies about the election and pushing for breathtakingly undemocratic measures, which included seizing voting machines and suggesting that the very deceased Venezuelan ruler Hugo Chavez was behind efforts to rig the election. She was so integral to Trump's plan to overturn the 2020 election that Trump was going to appoint Powell as a special counsel to investigate supposed election fraud. Part of the reason for that was her eagerness to appear on television and to push those unfounded claims.
This is stunning, heartbreaking, infuriating, and the most unpatriotic acts I can even imagine for people in this country to have participated in any way, shape, or form. And I want the American public to know right now that we will not be intimidated. We are not going to back down. We are going to clean this mess up now. President Trump won by a landslide. We are going to prove it.
That appointment and her appearances were part of a larger strategy to help the Trump campaign delay the counting of electoral votes on January 6th. The proposal to appoint her as special counsel was so unhinged and dangerous that the White House lawyer Pat Cipollone warned Trump that every member of his White House counsel's office would resign.
I don't think Sidney Powell would say that I thought it was a good idea to appoint her special counsel. I was vehemently opposed. I didn't think she should be appointed to anything. There was a real question in my mind and a real concern, particularly after the Attorney General had reached a conclusion that there wasn't sufficient election fraud to change the outcome of the election. When other people kept suggesting that there was, the answer is, what is it? And at some point, you have to put up or shut up.
Just yesterday, Fulton County Judge Scott McAfee denied a number of motions by Kenneth Chesebro and Sidney Powell, trying to dismiss all of the counts against them ahead of their trial, which is set to start Friday. Now, just for Chesebro, or Cheesebro, however he pronounces it. ABC News reported that Cheesebro was offered a similar deal back in September, but declined. NBC has now confirmed that reporting. Trump's lawyer, Steve Sadow, issued the following statement in response to Powell's plea deal. Quote, assuming truthful testimony in the Fulton County case, it will be favorable to my overall defense strategy. Interestingly enough, Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel just secured a cooperation deal with one of the 16 Republican fake electors in that state. And joining me now is Katie Phang, former Florida prosecutor and host of the Katie Phang Show right here on MSNBC, and Barbara McQuade, former U.S. attorney, professor at the University of Michigan Law School, and an MSNBC legal analyst. Thank you both for being here. Let me start by playing for both of you ladies Sidney Powell's 2021 podcast appearance, in which she describes her plan to delay certifying the 2020 election.
we were filing a 12th Amendment constitutional challenge to the process that the Congress was about to use under the Electoral Act provisions that simply don't jive with the 12th Amendment to the United States Constitution. And Justice Alito was our circuit justice for that. Then, everything broke loose, and she had to really speed up reconvening Congress to get the vote going before Justice Alito might have issued an injunction to stop it all, which is what should have happened.
Talk about the significance of having that person plead out.
Is that to me?
No, to Barbara. Sorry. I'm coming back to you in a second, Katie, but to Barb first.
It's incredibly significant. One is just such an extreme about face. This is someone who is the spokesperson of, releasing the Kraken and all of the things about Hugo Chavez and Venezuela and machines flipping votes. To have her say that she's guilty, that she committed these crimes is incredibly important. One thing we have not seen yet is the recorded statement, the proffer that she gave to prosecutors that could be used to lock her into her story. I think some would say, well, she will be cross-examined because of her prior inconsistent statements. Even Donald Trump at one time reportedly called her crazy. And yet, when someone is aligned with someone who is on trial, be it Donald Trump or Kenneth Chesebro, prosecutors will typically say, we didn't choose this person to be our witness. The defendant chose this person to associate himself with in this plot. And so by having her testify, certainly you'd have to corroborate anything she has to say with other evidence, but she can be a very powerful narrator because she was in the room where so many of these events occurred.
And Katie, I'm coming to you because you were one of the people who helped to confirm this information about Kenneth Chesebro having been offered his own plea deal. Very interesting that he was offered it first. He didn't take it. He would have had to plead guilty to a felony, but he would have been able to get his record expunged and pay a $10,000 fine. Talk about his risks now, because he now is going to go to trial tomorrow. That trial starts tomorrow. It was supposed to be the two of them. Now it's just going to be him.
Yeah, so let's be clear. We don't know the timing of when these plea offers have been extended, meaning Sidney Powell could have gotten this plea offer before Kenneth Chesebro, but opted not to take it until the eve of trial. Why? Because as you noted in the beginning to this segment, there have been a series of denials of these motions to dismiss that Judge Scott McAfee in Fulton County has entered against Kenneth Chesebro as well as Sidney Powell. And I also want to remind everybody the following as well. Kenneth Chesebro didn't want to be tried with Sidney Powell and vice versa. They tried to actually be separated from each other when they both filed a speedy demand. And so at this point, Kenneth Chesebro is going to go to trial by himself. Doesn't mean he can't plead out at literally the last minute, but he's going to go to trial by himself. And if that's the case, then he's got serious exposure, because now it'll be the full weight of the state of Georgia with Fani Willis in the entirety of their 100-something witnesses against just Kenneth Chesebro. But now we're going to add another person to that witness list. That's going to be Scott Hall, and as well as Sidney Powell.
Right, because Scott Hall took the plea deal first, and this is the first person to take a plea deal, right? This was the bail bondsman. So now you have the bail bondsman, and you have Sidney Powell, Katie. So they're going to be witnesses now against Chesebro, right?
Yeah, and if you consider the following, it's a great way of the dominoes falling, right? Because Scott Hall, as a Georgia bail bondsman, his main role was involving the Coffee County breach of the election equipment. He clearly had evidence against Sidney Powell. That was an incentive, I believe, for her to take a plea. Now you've got Sidney Powell, but Sidney Powell is definitely not one of those low-rung co-conspirators.
Right.
She's the president's lawyer. She's Donald Trump's lawyer. She's the Trump campaign's lawyer. So not only does she have to provide truthful testimony, she has to turn over documents. And those documents are 100% going to implicate Donald Trump, as well as Jenna Ellis, who was standing behind her during that presser, Rudy Giuliani. Remember, these are all co-defendants that have all been charged with RICO. And so under Georgia state RICO law, you don't all have to be planning it all together. Somebody could be doing something in one area of the state of Georgia or another part of the country, and you could be found guilty of RICO.